Have you ever wanted to create brush strokes that would seamlessly self-blend, going from dark to light all in a single swoop? This is called double loading, and today we'll learn just how to do that, and it's no surprise that this is my favorite way of painting. My name's Anica, and today I'll show you how to load the brush and then how to use the brush. We'll be learning the mechanics and training your muscles and your brain and your hands to do it automatically. And you can do this. We'll do some exercises and then we'll paint a few tulips at the end.
The first part of this method is however we lay the brush down on the paper, we're going to keep the brush in that same position but only use our hands, arms, forearms to do the moving.
Let's have a look at the dagger brush and label the parts. This is the tip, the sword, the belly and the back. When loading the brush for this method of double loading, we need to maintain the flat shape of the brush at all times. Fully saturate it with either water or tea-like paint and just keep it from dripping. Then we can gently pick up a little creamy paint right on the very tip of the brush and we're ready to go. Now we need to do some exercises before we paint some flowers. For this first one, we're going to rest our wrist onto the paper.
And then moving our hand from our wrist.
If we lay down the sword and the tip of the brush,
we need to move our hand to the left.
Now lay down the sword and the tip
and turn our hand to the right.
And have a little practice at doing these.
The more you can pivot your hand from your wrist, the greater the stroke.
A little bit of practice and you'll be a wizard in no time. Every time you feel the brush running out, or even if you're in doubt, it's better to reload. Okay, that was the first part. Now for this next part, I don't need to wash my brush, but I seem to always be doing it and patting it dry like this.
I said I don't need to wash my brush, but I always seem to. That must mean that I need to wash my brush. It gives me more confidence to know that my brush is wet and straight, and that's why I do it.
I am going to get some more tea-like thin paint, which is buff titanium and a little bit of pink that's been left here in the palette. The pink is quinacridone rose. So this is nice and runny, and I'm dipping the very tip into some creamy paint. I'm now going to face the brush away from me with the tip pointing towards me. Now I need to do these curves in the opposite way, but to do this, it's much easier to not rest your wrist on the paper, but to pivot from your elbow, which is resting on the table. So now we're going to pivot like this. I'm going to put down the sword and the tip and we'll move to the left. Put it down and move to the right.
The brush is kept in the same position. All the movement is coming from our arms.
Look, aren't those little bits just so beautiful? I mean, how else could you get a little thin edging like that? That just beautifully blends into everything. Yes, it's magic, my friends, and I absolutely love it. Now, let's do it again. I'm pivoting my arm from my elbow. Lay down the sword and the tip and see how far you can actually move your arm. This is all about movement. Sword and tip down, move to the left and move to the right. I have loaded my brush with a little bit of the buff titanium, very tea-like, the tip again into the crimson. Now again, we're pivoting from the elbow, but just see how far you can go. Try that. You've got to be comfortable. You've got to have space to move your arm. So make sure you can swing your arm around. Get all pots of water out the way and rest your elbow in a good spot, and then let your elbow do the work. What a beautiful ribbon. Let's do that again. Again. Down, moving to the left, coming back to the right. Just go for as long as you can go. That's really good. Now, here's a page. Okay, so again, a tea-like consistency.
In preparation for our tulip, let's do a bit of a quarter circle stroke. The brush is loaded with tea-like pink paint and a bit of dark on the tip. And then with the sword and tip down, we move backwards or to the right to create this quarter circle shape. Then we can do one forwards.
Now let's turn the brush 180 degrees facing this way. And what we want to do now is just move the whole brush up and down in a bit of a upside down U shape. Up and down. And you can change that U shape a little bit. Think of petals. All right, let's go back to our tulip and add some of the petals that might be at the back, like that. I'm washing my brush, patting it dry, and I'm just going to blend this out in here. We're going to do another stroke. Get some tea-like consistency of paint on your brush and a little dab of the crimson. Put your sword and tip down. So if I now go back to this tulip, I may be able to do this. Of course, it would be better if it was dry, but look at this. At the moment, I'm resting on my wrist, and I was able to do that.
You need to get your dagger and find out where you're most comfortable. Is it from the wrist, forearm, or elbow? Ultimately, when you start swinging that brush around for beautiful big paintings, you'll be using your whole arm from your shoulder.
Okay, let's have a little practice. I have a whole lot of very thin serpentine green on my brush and a little dab into the ultramarine blue. And now a leaf, a stem, a leaf.
We're doing the same thing for the leaves. The brush is kept in one position and all the movement is coming from our arms.
Let's have another little practice at the leaves. Same position.
So we've done a little bit of practice and now we're ready for our tulips. And we're also going to see about that trick that I mentioned. How on earth are we going to trick ourselves?
Okay, so are we ready for some tulips? I have this book on bulbs from Better Homes and Gardens, and I'm referring to some of these tulips for my tulips. I'm using Baohong cold press paper, What I'm going to do first is slightly spray my paper with water and then pat it dry with some paper towel just to reduce the surface tension. What is surface tension when it comes to watercolour paper? Well, perhaps it's too much sizing on the paper, I'm not sure.
But it certainly makes it a whole lot easier, and paint is much easier to apply.
Okay, I have some tea-like paint here, very, very thin. It's a little bit of crimson and a bit of nickel azo yellow. I actually want to get rid of this crimson, and I'm looking at colours that mix okay with it so that, I make the most of it. Now, here's a curve like that. Now, I'm going to face the brush away from me, keep the brush straight and come around. Going to put some paint up there. And now I'll wash my brush and lift a little. Look, like that. And wash my brush again, and I might lift a little bit from this one. All right, let's leave that one just like that for now. And perhaps I'll add a little bit more yellow. And fill my brush with this very tea-like consistency and dip the tip of my brush into some thicker paint. I had to wipe my brush just then because it was a little bit slippery on my finger. It was wet. Alrighty, so let's do basically a C curve with the tip of the brush down and the sword and just coming around. Let's repeat that, starting at the bottom and coming up. And now I washed my brush and dried it, and I'm just going to pull a little bit of this here and there to do that. See how the paint has travelled back into the area because it was a bit wet when I lifted. So now I'm just going to lift that again. Okay, now let's do one that's a little bit open. So I'm picking up my tea-like consistency, dipping into the thicker red paint, and I'm going to go up and down with my brush, and then some strokes like that. They can suggest the petals in the background, and perhaps we need one coming a bit loose down the side. We'll just see how that goes. Now I'm going to pull a little bit of a stem out of each because I think it's really pretty when they're joined up. See, and it doesn't matter that I've gone into this flower because all of these are going to merge together. Now let's go for some green. This is serpentine green here, and I'm going to dip a little bit of ultramarine on the end, and the point of the brush is facing me. Look at that lovely stroke there, and I can just adjust the tip. I can even widen the stroke by going over it and extending it. I'm going to bring one. At this stage, I'm going straight over my strokes because everything is wet. It's just going to beautifully bleed into each other. Let's put a little bit more blue into the equation. And perhaps even some water. And some water on this side. It's okay because everything's wet. It's not going to create any problems at all. If I hadn't have wet this paper, there would be, the brush strokes would be drier, and sure, it's great to have them sometimes, but you don't always want them. Going to extend a little point there. And now I can lift some lines in there as well, just to make it a bit more interesting. I am washing my brush and drying it, and then I can lift some highlights out. Just to make it a little bit more interesting. And it will be best to wait for this to dry. I have a little reference here that I'm going to semi-follow because it looks quite nice, and I think I'll just pencil in some of these lines. That'll make this one look a bit better. So if this was perhaps a petal, and I've got more humps here than the photo does, but never mind, we'll just do it like this, and maybe like that. Okay, let's do it like that, and I'll show you what I'm following. I'm going to add a little bit of neutral tint and make a few little center bits like that. They're not quite like that, but anyway. Now for some yellow in the center. And I'll just wait for that to dry a little, and we'll go on to the others. Can even do that. Let's see how we can make something nice or fun out of these other two tulips. I am loading my brush with a very tea-like consistency of this very, very faint paint. And just making sure that it doesn't drip and picking up a little bit of the crimson. And now I'm going to make a petal coming down here. Just so that you can see easier, maybe I'll just, this is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to make another petal there, like that. So if I want this to be a darker edge, I would use my tip along there. If I want the bottom to be the darker edge, I would use my tip along there. So I have to make up my mind. Maybe I will go on the bottom like that. Didn't have enough dark paint on the bottom, like that. And blend, I'm washing my brush and wiping it dry and blending this out, because this gives me the opportunity to make it darker in there. So I'm going to pick up some dark paint, even add a little bit of blue to it. And now just press a triangle in there. And I am going to decide that this tulip is going to be in front of that one. So therefore, that little petal there, I'll have to skip it. So I'll do it like this. See how important it is for the brush to be straight, flat. Otherwise, you can't really do it that well. So look, here, and now I might continue there. And blend this out. But we can put a little bit of really dark stuff just in there. But of course there's another petal. So I'll do it like that and blend this out. That looks interesting. See how we have a light patch there, a dark patch there. Perhaps we could make a dark border in there. So I am just got water on my brush and a little bit of a dark tip. And to make it easier for myself, I'm going to turn my paper. And this one can come down. All right, let's see if we can do something different on this one. I'm dipping my brush in water and tapping it dry and coming into a little bit of this. And we'll make one here at the front, but darker on the bottom. And I can lift some of this. All right, so let's make it darker again on the bottom of this one. I can see I have too much paint, but wet it, tap it, pick up some color, and apply. Now let's do it from the other side. And maybe come out a little. Now for a little bit of dark. And I'm going to, I have a little bit more paint, so a third of the way up my brush, because I'm going to do a little stamp. Like that. And this gets blended out. Now we can maybe go back to this one and see what we can do. See, it might be easier to use a smaller brush. This is true.
But as a golden rule of thumb, use the largest brush you're comfortable with.
A thinner mix again of the crimson, because what I'd like to do is just make some transparent petals. And another one. And picking up a little bit more crimson and a little bit of the blue. I might get a tissue, because the background of the flower is quite light. I can just dab some of that out. And now a little bit of the crimson on the end, and let's just make this one a little bit more colourful. Turning the page. And then coming in between the yellow bits.
The less I think about these little dark bits that I'm putting in, the better it is.
a little bit more of the neutral, make that a little bit darker. And now with a little bit of the ultramarine, it looks as though I've got my shadows more on that side, so I might just give that one some darkness. And maybe this one over here. If you've enjoyed this video, like, subscribe and share with your friends. And if you'd like to get to know your Dagger brush a whole lot more, check out these 2 videos right here, packed with tons of other tips and tricks. And see you next time.